For those of you that don't live in the United States and are watching this right now, this is Mother's Day, and we try to honor moms. Today, as a church, we gave you flowers, and Mom, we had some chocolate out there and some special gifts. The greatest gift that we could do for you, though, today, mothers, is to invite you into a meal. Literally, after this service ends today, we're going to invite you into a meal with the King of the universe, and you have a chance to commune, to take communion with your Creator. And moms, what we just really want to do is to tell you how awesome you are. Mom, you were there for most of us when we fell down and had a boo-boo. You were standing over us when we were sick. You were our nurse and our chef and our taxi driver and our counselor and our teacher and our caregiver. And for everybody in this room that had a godly mama, you need to go home today and thank Jesus for that woman and her influence in your life. Because I've talked to lots of people over the years, and far more people have come to faith in Jesus because of their mama than a preacher's sermon. And today what we really want to do is we want to honor mamas because they were there for us when there were some problems. But if we're honest, there are some times when the circumstances of life are so big, they're so significant that no one can get you out of it, that the evil around you is so overwhelming that even mom can't fix that kind of mess. And that's what we're going to learn about in the Bible today. We're going to keep studying through the book of Genesis on purpose. Let me explain something to you, church. We want to honor mothers on Mother's Day. We think it's right to honor godly mothers. Not all of us in this room had a godly mother that really poured into your faith. But if you did, we think you should honor her if she's still alive. You should respect her and honor her if she's passed along. But today is not about worshiping mothers. Today, what we're going to do is worship God our Father. And today what you see, while we try to honor mothers and worship God our Father, is the greatest mess in human history. It's so bad that only the creator of the universe, only the God who built everything and owns everything can fix that kind of mess. And God has a plan. He has a plan to fix it. But his plan is pretty painful. And it's going to be really, really difficult. So what we're going to do is we're just going to keep right on studying through the book of Genesis. We're in Genesis chapter 7 today. And if you've got the Two Cities app on your phone, you just click that button that shows today's sermon, and you got the notes and the scripture and everything else right there in front of you. What you see as we start studying through the book of Genesis is how one man's faith changed the course of humanity. Literally rescued all generations that would ever come after him. 3,500 years later, there are 8 billion people on the planet today, and every single living human being owes their life to one man and his faith. That man is Noah, and that's who we're going to talk about today. So I don't want you to go ahead and roll your sleeves up. I've already rolled mine up, and we're going to look at Genesis chapter 7. We're going to start in verse 1, and I want you to see how one generation can change the future and keep changing the future. Here's what the Bible teaches us about Noah. Then the Lord God said to Noah, Genesis 7, verse 1, "Enter the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you alone are righteous before me in this generation." Say "you alone" out loud. God looks over all of humanity. He's looking at the hearts of every human being on earth. And he says, Noah, you alone are righteous before me in this generation. You are to take with you 7 pairs, a male and its female, of all of the clean animals, and 2 of the animals that are not clean. A male and its female, and 7 pairs, male and female, of the birds of the sky, in order to keep offspring alive throughout the earth. In other words, Noah, if you don't do your job, we don't have a future. We don't have humanity going forward. Noah is the only righteous guy in his generation. Now, Noah comes from good stock. Noah's a direct descendant of Adam, the man who walked with God in the garden in the cool of the day. Noah is a direct descendant. His granddaddy is Enoch, who walked with God, who was so close to God that Jesus said, you know what, Enoch, why don't you just come be with me? You don't even need to go through death to be here. I'm just going to take you home, and you don't even have to die. But something has happened, and evil has spread so much at this point in human history that according to the Bible, there's one guy on planet Earth left who loves Jesus, who wants to walk with God, who's trying to do the right thing. That guy's name is Noah, and Noah is the reason why you and I are still alive today. Anybody want to take a guess at how many animals are on that ark? Because consider the math with me for just a second. Not only every animal that is alive today, but also all of those animals that are extinct were with Noah on that ark. All of the insects, all of the birds, and by the way, not just one pair of the unclean animals, but 7 pair of the clean animals are on this ark. You want to take a guess at the total number of animals that's on that ark? It's a lot. And the reason why there has to be 7 pair of clean animals is because when this ark lands and when Noah gets off the ark, he's going to make animal sacrifices with the clean animals. I got to have enough animals that they can keep having animal babies, and we still have those animals today. If you sacrifice the only pair of animals, that animal goes extinct. So Noah's on the ark, and he's preparing. And what we've been looking at for the last couple of weeks in the Bible is Noah's faith gets him to this moment. We don't know exactly how long Noah is working on this ark, but we do know this. God gives Noah very specific instructions, and Noah starts building. Noah and his sons start working on an ark that's nowhere close to the water, and at this point, the earth hasn't even seen rain before. And I assure you that Noah is being ridiculed by his neighbors and mocked by his coworkers because of what he's doing right now. And everybody is confused, and it doesn't make any sense to anybody, and it probably doesn't even make sense to Noah. But Noah's rolling up his sleeves, and Noah's going to work. And church, I think there's a lesson that we can learn from Noah right now. Here's the lesson. Faith before the storms is difficult. Trust in the storms is even harder. Anybody been there or right there right now? Faith before the storm is hard. Faith during the storm, trust during the storm is harder than that. But what happens is God steps in and God rescues in the middle of the storm. And I want you to know something about Noah. His name, literally translated, is rest. Noah's done the work. Noah's had the faith. Noah's built the boat. And now what God has said is, Noah, I need you to get your family and get on the boat. You don't have to tell the animals twice. I'm bringing the animals to you, Noah, but you get on that boat. And now all you need to do is just trust me and rest on that boat. And I will show up and I will rescue you. If you will trust me, Noah, and if you will hang on during the storms of life. You guys have probably heard this famous preacher story. I doubt if it's even true. You know, preachers make stories up all the time. But there's this story of the flood. The governor has already issued an evacuation order. Everybody get out. The flood is coming, and the land is going to be overwhelmed. You guys heard this story before, right? So then the sheriff's department shows up and knocks on the door and says, hey, the governor has issued an evacuation order. I need you to get your family, get in the vehicles with us and get out of your house because a flood is coming. And they say, nope, you know what? We're good because God is going to rescue us. And then the waters start, and they come to the door, and the house is starting to go underwater. And so the Coast Guard shows up with boats and comes to the door and says, I need you to get on the boat because there's more water coming and your family's not going to survive. And they say, nope, we're good. God's going to rescue us. And finally, the water is so bad, you've heard this story before, that it's now at the rooftop. And the family is all on the rooftop huddled together. And the National Guard flies in helicopter to the rooftop, lets down the rope and says, get on the helicopter. This is your last chance. And they say, no, we're good. God's going to rescue us. And then the floodwaters go over the rooftop, and the whole family drowns. And they stand before God in heaven and say, God, what's up? I thought you were supposed to rescue us. You know how the story goes, right? And God says, I sent the sheriff and the Coast Guard and the National Guard. What else do you want? And I really think the lesson that we need to learn from that story, the lesson that you need to learn from Noah, is there are times in your life where you are begging God, desperately asking God to rescue you. And God doesn't rescue you when you want or the way you want. That ever happened to anybody in this room? You've been praying for God to heal Big Mama from cancer, and you're asking for him to do it right now, but she's not getting better, and that cancer is taking over her body, and eventually she dies. Look up here, church. God's promise is, I will always totally, completely rescue my people. But it might not be when you want, and it might not be the rescue that you want, the way you want. I will rescue your grandmother from cancer, but it may be only after the cancer kills her that I make her total and whole and complete and never have to struggle with sickness, never have to deal with pain, never have to go through another problem again. You can take it to the bank. God always rescues people. But it doesn't always happen the way we want, and it doesn't always happen when we want. He rescues us on his time, and our job is to trust, and here's where it gets hard, and to rest in God, showing up and rescuing us when he wants to and the way that he wants to. And sometimes the problems are so big and so bad that you aren't big enough to handle them. I'm telling you, there are some circumstances in life where swim lessons are not going to save you, and that's where we are right now in this story of Noah's life. I need you to lean in for a second. And parents, if you're at home and the kids are clamoring for your attention, I need you to focus on what you're going to hear from me next, because this is very important to your soul. This is how faith and works operate at the same time, which means you are praying and you are trusting God, and at the same time, you are putting your faith into practice and believing God at the same time that you're serving God and trusting him. Here's what Genesis 7 says next. 7 days from now, verse 4, I will make it rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and every living thing that I have made, I will wipe off the face of the earth. I need to read that phrase again. Every living thing that I have made, I will wipe off of the face of the earth. And Noah did everything that the Lord commanded him. If you've ever had the nightmare of drowning, death by drowning, this is literally about to take place. And Noah's done all of the work, and now Noah has one last thing to do. Noah, I want you to get your sons, get your wife and their wives, and you get on that ark, and Noah, mark your calendar. You better be on that ark in the next 7 days. Because if you're not on that ark, you will not survive. Nobody on that ark can swim hard enough and long enough to last through this flood. And by the way, come back next week and you'll read that you're not swimming for just 40 days of rain. You're swimming for the entire time that the earth is covered with water, a long time on the earth. I just said otter instead of water. That would be weird, the earth covered with otters. Noah, you better get your boys and their wives and your wife, and you get on that ark, and I'm telling you, you better do it right now, because you have 7 days before I pour my wrath out on the earth. Anybody here ever asked the question, is it right for God to punish every living creature? Because that's what he's saying right now. I will pour my wrath out on every living creature. Is it right for God to punish everything that has breath for the evil that's on the earth? Because if you're wrestling with that, I need to remind you of something from the Bible right now. The phrase the two phrases that you see in these verses in the original Hebrew language is unmistakable. God is saying, I made it and I will wipe it off the face of the earth. What the Bible is saying, it's mine, I own it, I can do with it whatever I want to do, and if it's not on that ark, it doesn't survive. But you should ask the question, why did God give Noah a 7-day warning? Like, it doesn't take that long to grab your stuff and to get on the ark, especially if you've been working on this thing for decades or longer. And many of the Hebrew scholars believe that 7 days is the ritual period of mourning in Hebrew culture. It's when you sit Shiva and you mourn over the grief or the loss of another human being. Maybe God is telling Noah, I want you to prepare right now for the widespread death that you're about to hear, that you're about to see. And it's going to be all around you, and every living creature that's not on that boat with you is about to die. But I think there's also a sign of God's mercy here. You see, what he says is, I will wipe it off of the face of the earth, but that word actually can be translated, I will wash it off of the face of the earth. In other words, I will wipe away, I will wash away all of this evil, and I'm going to make everything right again. Noah, it's just going to cost a lot of people their lives. And I personally have no way of backing this up, but I really think for 7 days, Noah is standing at the open door on that ark, begging his neighbors to get on the boat with them, challenging them to believe and to follow Jesus before it's too late. And 7 days later, when the rains start, the only people on that boat are Noah and his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. And everybody else who either consciously decided not to get on that ark or didn't have the chance to get on that ark, the evil is washed away through God's wrath. And God is sparing just a couple of people because of one man's great faith. There's a story about an old Scotsman, this is many years ago, who used to have a job ferrying people across a river in Scotland. They would come to the edge of the boat. They would come to the edge of the pier. They would get in his boat. He would grab the oars and he would pull them across the river and put them on the pier on the other side. They never even got their feet wet as they moved from one side of the river to the other. But the villagers in the town knew that there was something unique about this old Scotsman's boat. Actually, something about his oars. You see, on one of those oars, he had etched the word faith. On the other oar, he had etched the word works. And that Scotsman would pull with all of his might and bring families safely from one side of the river to the other by pulling on both faith and works. Well, people started to wonder, I don't understand, why would he go through the trouble of scratching the words faith and works into these 2 oars? So one day, family stopped him and said, can you explain this to us? And he said, of course. When we are challenged to follow God, we're challenged to believe that God is big enough, strong enough to rescue us. But we are also challenged to put our faith into practice, to put works into practice. I'll prove it to you. And the old man started to pull as hard as he could with one oar that showed faith. And the harder that he pulled, the more the boat just went into one circle and never made it an inch. But if you spend all of your time working hard, but no faith, I'll show you what happens. And he pulled as hard as he could with the oar that says works, and it went in a circle and went nowhere. And then the old Scotsman said, I do this to remind Christians that what God is challenging us to do is to believe and to serve, to rest and work at the same time, trusting that he is going to use our efforts and take what we've done and make it miraculous for us. And it's only when you pull on faith and works that you get to the other side of the lake. And maybe for some of you right now, you're in the storm. And you realize it's bigger than my strength is able to handle. I can't get out of this. Mom can't get me out of this mess. I need God to step in. And I need God to do a miracle. And if that's where you're at right now, that's where faith and where works show up at the same time. Where God uses both faith and works at the same time and does great things through both of those things at the same time. Because, church, where would we be today if God said, Noah, I need you to build a boat? And Noah said, you know what? I'm good. I'll just sit here and I'll pray when the rain starts. Where would you and I be today if that's what he did? You see, there are some problems in life that even mom can't get you out of this mess. And the truth is, we've been looking for the last several weeks at Noah's great faith. But for a second, I want to take a step back, and I want to look at the faith of his sons, or at least I want to look at what it was like to be one of his sons on that ark. Because moms, can I remind you of something? Many of you will be the single greatest influence on your child's life. At the end of their life, they will say, of all of the people that have ever had a big deal or big influence on my life, nobody left a bigger impact than mom did. But even you, mom, can't get somebody through the biggest challenges of life. For most of us in this room, if you were raised in a good Christian home, it probably went like this for you. Mom and dad told you what they believe, and because you believed mom and dad, you believed what mom and dad said they believed, up until a point. And then at some point, you started to wonder whether what mom and dad believed was true. You started to question their beliefs. And don't get me wrong, there's absolutely nothing wrong with asking hard questions. Every year as a church, we give you the opportunity to ask the hardest questions of us because we believe it develops your faith. At some point, you start to ask hard questions about mom and dad's faith because that's the point where mom and dad's faith start to become your faith. And I need to remind you, church, on Mother's Day, nobody in this room, nobody on planet Earth is getting into heaven on mom's faith. Nobody's going to get into heaven because your daddy was a preacher. You go into heaven and you stand before a holy God based on your faith and your faith alone. And it isn't mom and dad's faith anymore. It has to become your faith and you own it if it's going to change your life. Well, have you ever wondered, did Noah's sons share their dad's faith? Were they good men who believed as hard as their dad believed? Because the Bible tells us in Genesis chapter 5, Noah is 500 years old when he has his first son, a boy by the name of Shem. Now look at this. Noah is 600 years old, meaning his son is 100 years old, when the flood came and the waters covered the earth. So Noah, his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives entered the ark because of the flood waters. From the animals that are clean and from the animals that are not clean, and from the birds and every creature that crawls on the ground. 2 of each, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark, just as God had commanded him. And 7 days later, the floodwaters came on the earth. We don't ever read about Noah's sons' faith. We do know this from the Bible, that in Noah's generation, he is the only man righteous on the face of the earth. So why does his wife and his sons and their wives get spared? Why are they safe and dry on the ark along with Noah? Is it because of their faith or is it because of their daddy's faith? The truth is that Noah's faith is strong enough that he is able to at least recruit his sons to build. And at this point in history, looks his boys in the eyes and says, sons, don't mess around. In 7 days, if you're not on that ark, you will die along with everybody else out there. So you better grab your wife and you better not be late. You better be on that ark before the floods start to come. And at some point, those boys had to at least believe Noah if not believe in the God that Noah believed in enough to be on that ark. And 7 days later, they are safe and dry because of their daddy's faith. You and I are here today because of one man's faith. Every creature that's on the face of the earth is alive today because of one man's faith and the difference that it made in that generation. Now, we've been talking a lot about this word ark. And for a Jewish boy alive today, when you hear the word ark, something very different comes into your mind than for most of us. Most of us, when we hear the word ark, we think of a boat that Noah made. But if you grew up reading the Bible, if you grew up learning from the law of Moses, you know that there's actually more than one ark in the Bible. In fact, in Exodus chapter 2, the very next book of the Bible, there's a mother whose faith is so great that she builds an ark out of reeds and she covers it with tar and she puts her baby in this ark and sends the baby down the Nile River to protect her son Moses from Pharaoh's decision to murder every Hebrew baby in Egypt. If it wasn't for Moses' mother's ark, Moses isn't alive today. And then Moses, a few years later, builds an ark. Moses builds the ark of God. You see, God gives Moses some instructions, and Moses creates an ark, and this ark will become the centerpiece of the tabernacle, the center of the temple, the center of the worship of God. And if you were a Jewish boy today, when you hear the word ark, what you think of is your synagogue. You see, right behind the rabbi is a cabinet. That cabinet is the ark. And inside that ark are the scrolls, the word of God, the law of Moses, and the way that you know God, the way that you make sure that you are safe and dry is by going through the ark. There's not just the ark of Noah, but there's also the ark that rescued Moses. And then the ark of God, the ark of the covenant, the Raiders of the Lost Ark that you read about in the Bible. And what the Bible is reminding us is that last ark is where God's mercy is. That last ark is where God's presence dwells. You see, the cover of that ark was referred to as the mercy seat of God. It was where you went and pleaded on your behalf because of your sins. It's where you presented a sacrifice and you asked the God of the universe to bless your family and to forgive your family from our mistakes. It's where you find the mercy of God and the wrath of God at the same time, just like Noah's Ark. Because God is about to wash away all of the evil. And his wrath is as great in this moment as anywhere in the course of human history. At the same time, he says, Noah, I love you, and I want to rescue people and all of the generations that come after you. So I'm going to be merciful to you, Noah, and I'm going to protect you and your wife and your children and their families, and everybody that's on that ark is safe with me. And God is still in the business of doing the same thing today. You see, for some of you, you see the second statement on the screens? For some of you, maybe you recognize I'm in trouble and I've made some mistakes and I need the God of the universe to show me mercy. I need him to rescue me. I need him to fix me and to clean me up and to make me new. In just a second, if that's where you're at right now, I'm going to pray for you. But for others of us in this room, I hope that you have the same kind of faith that makes an impact on your children, their children, and the children that come after you. You have the kind of impact that leaves a lasting impression because you believed, and you believed enough that they started to put their hope in the one that you put your hope in, and pretty soon your children and your grandchildren are hoping and believing in the same God that you believe in because of the difference that Jesus has made in your life. So I'm just going to challenge those that already know Jesus in this room to go out this week and to live this hope with faith and works in such a way that your neighbors see that you believe in something and it is anchoring you even in the middle of the storms of life. For those of you who don't have that hope, I'm going to pray that today is the day that God does a miracle in your heart. So